I think that last video, I think my last word was cut off, but that's okay because the last word really wasn't important anyway, but all the other words I said were. Now, I began that last video by explaining that I was using online text of Sophocles' play, Oedipus the King, and I kind of tortured myself about what to do about Arthur, because the best known writings of Arthur are Malory's Morte d'Arthur and Tennyson's Idylls of the King. And both of those are very long pieces. They are better suited for a literature class devoted to novels rather than an overview of what we are doing. And so I rejected both of those, even though they are available online. And I could not find any summaries that I really liked of Arthur, and so I am going to provide the summary myself. But before we get into that, I want to go back to Oedipus for a couple of things. Number one, I talked about how Oedipus was exposed on the hillside in order to absolve his parents of his debt. We also see this in at least one other hero story, and that is of Perseus. Perseus's grandfather had Perseus and his mother, Danae, put into a box and cast out onto the sea. And the reason why he did that was to absolve himself of their debts. If the gods wanted them to live, they would live. And if the gods wanted them to die, they would die. And Perseus's grandfather, whose name, of course, escapes me right now, was also trying to outwit fate, which, again, we will talk about next week in the Apocalypse/Fate module. Now, Oedipus, again, his quest was quite different from the quest of the earlier heroes that we looked at. Oedipus' quest was not when he left Corinth and went wandering through the Greek countryside wherein he met his real father Laus and killed him. His quest was the pursuit of knowledge and to find out what was wrong with his land. The pursuit and gaining of knowledge is often seen as quite negative in myth, in both early myth and later myth. We certainly see it with Oedipus, wherein Jocasta and Tiresias both tried to persuade him to abandon his quest in order to find out the great evil that was within the land. Eve gets in trouble because she seeks knowledge. Pandora gets in trouble because she seeks knowledge. And when those two women seek knowledge, not only do they get into trouble, but it causes trouble for all humans everywhere. Later in modern myth, Frankenstein, which is subtitled The Modern Prometheus, Victor Frankenstein seeks knowledge as well. And I cover Frankenstein in both my Myth and Monsters class and my Intro to Lit class, approach it from different ways, but that seeking of knowledge and how to resurrect the dead really got Victor into a lot of trouble, and not only did he suffer because of it, but his whole family and his friends suffered from it as well. I could teach a whole class on the pursuit of knowledge and how dangerous it can be, but we're going to put that aside, and that class probably won't ever get taught, but we're going to put that aside and go on to Arthur. Now, as I began this video by saying I chose not to have you read Malory or Tennyson and to talk about Arthur, I also want to point out that there are a lot of movies out there that have a lot of misinformation about Arthur. Discussed in Gilgamesh how it was very, very, very likely that Gilgamesh was an actual king. Oedipus, who knows? I haven't seen anybody argue one way or the other whether Oedipus was a real historical person or not. There is some evidence that Arthur was a real person, but it is so sketchy and so disputed, I'm just going to let it go at that. But Arthur was a Briton, and it was after the Romans had left Britain, and Arthur was a Celt. Now, one of the atrocities of a movie that I tried to watch and could not watch all of it put Arthur in Scotland. Yeah, you saw that look on my face. It also had him being a Roman soldier. Yeah, you see that look on my face. It had a few other things that just abhorred me, and I couldn't even watch the whole movie, and I can't even remember the name of the movie. It might have just been Arthur. So there's a lot of misinformation out there about Arthur. And of course, one of the best known tales of Arthur is The Sword and the Stone, T.H. White's book, The Once and Future King. And of course, the Disney movie called The Sword and the Stone and the circumstances of Arthur's life. One of the movies that I do like about Arthur is called Excalibur, and it is rated R. If you decide to want to look it up, it has, I think, some really apt information about Arthur and his life. So, what makes Arthur a hero, and what in particular links Arthur to Oedipus? Well, first of all, Arthur is immortal. He has no godly blood, but he is of royal blood. He is not fathered by a god, but he is fathered by Uther Pendragon. And at that time, Uther was fighting to get all the Britons together to fight not only the remnants of the Romans and anybody else who might be there, but, well, that's what he was doing. He was trying to unite the divisive clans of Britain. And he had gone to Cornwall to meet with the Duke of Cornwall and saw the Duke of Cornwall's wife, Igraine, and immediate lust, love, whatever you want to call it, he wanted this woman. She was married, and she was a chaste woman, which means she wasn't looking to have an affair. And so how is Arthur conceived in this circumstances? By magical means. Merlin, aka Myrddin, who predates Arthur in Celtic lore, changes Uther Pendragon into the image of the Duke of Cornwall. The Duke of Cornwall is sent out on a wild hares chase, and Uther gains admittance to the castle, lies with Igraine, and impregnates her with Arthur. Now, subsequently, the Duke dies. Uther and Igraine get together, but when the baby is born, Merlin comes and takes the baby away from the couple, and he is given to Sir Ector. And I think I said he was given to Sir Kay in another video, and of course Kay is Ector's son, so excuse me for that. But he is given to Sir Ector to raise, and so he is like Oedipus, like Theseus, like Perseus, not raised by his real parents. And of course, some heroes are raised by their mothers, but neither Oedipus nor Arthur are raised by either of their parents. And when he gets older, he meets Merlin, and Merlin becomes his teacher. So that is one of the circumstances of why Arthur fits the heroic mold and why he resembles Oedipus. Now, when Arthur is in his teen years, he goes with Ector and Kay to a tournament. And it happens to be where the sword Excalibur is embedded in a stone. Do you like those visual representations there? The sword has been embedded in the stone, and only the offspring of Uther Pendragon can draw it out. Now, I want to point out that most renditions of this circumstance, this incident, are incorrect, because the sword that Arthur draws from the stone is not Excalibur. Excalibur is given to Arthur by the Lady of the Lake, but he does withdraw, pulls out Uther Pendragon's sword, where no man has been able to do that before, and this established him as the heir of Uther Pendragon and king of Britain. But it's not that simple. There's a lot of war going on. There's still a lot of divisiveness. But eventually, Arthur does unite the Britons, and it becomes one kingdom. Sounds great, doesn't it? but of course there are problems. Now, before I get into the problems, I want to point out a few things about Malory's book, The Death of Arthur, and Tennyson's later famous, very long poem, Idylls of the King, or book Idylls of the King. What we know about the myth of Arthur, which is the most widely known tales of Arthur, are not accurate. There was no Lancelot in the early tales. Lancelot was a much later addition, and of course, Lancelot is from France, from Normandy. There was no betrayal by Guinevere, and it is Parsifal who finds the Grail. And the knights who were with Arthur were some of the same knights, Bedivere, Parsifal, but there was no Lancelot, there was no betrayal. And there were some other circumstances that were not quite the same as there were in the later stories. But we're going to stick to the later ones because those are the best known. Now, Arthur marries Guinevere, and Guinevere means the fair one. And she was blonde because she was fair, fair-haired, fair skin. Gwendolyn comes from the same root word as Guinevere, and it also means fair face or fair brow. That doesn't necessarily mean pretty, but pale. So anyway, he marries Guinevere, and he's quite often being touted as very much older than she was, but he wouldn't have been. He would have been close to her age. And of course, in the later stories then, she has an affair with Lancelot. And this causes sin, evil, to fall upon the land, and the land is blighted. Does that sound familiar? Now, this is not the only reason. This is not the only evil that has come to Britain. Arthur and Oedipus both commit incest, and they both do it unknowingly. Even though Oedipus has been told he will kill his father and marry his mother, and Jocasta has been told the same thing, he is absolutely and utterly ignorant of the fact that Jocasta is his mother. She probably is too. I'm not so sure about that. But at any rate, he commits incest by marrying his mother and having children with her. Arthur is also tricked, and Oedipus wasn't tricked, but Arthur is tricked into having relations with his half-sister Morgana, and impregnates her, and she has Mordred, who of course later slays Arthur in the big battle. In both of these instances, ignorance is no excuse. Regardless of the fact that they both committed these incestuous acts, aka sinful acts, it doesn't make any difference. The act was done. It's just as if, as ignorance of a law does not excuse you if you break that law, it is the same with both Oedipus and Arthur. And so both of them have done evil unwittingly, but Arthur also ignores all the signs about Guinevere and Lancelot. And so this too affects the land and its blighted state. And I'm going to stop there and stop looking at that cat on the back of the couch.